The man you've all been waiting to hear from, Rudy Giuliani. So I want to talk to you about this because obviously Director Comey has decided not to, or in fact saying that no reasonable prosecutor would recommend that this case would go forward against Hillary Clinton. Your thoughts? My thoughts are that it would be unreasonable for a prosecutor not to go forward with it, and almost an abdication of duty. What Elizabeth just laid out under 18 U.S.C. Section 793 is what we would call a no-brainer back in the U.S. Attorney's Office that Jim Comey belonged to. He was one of my assistants.
Our investigation looked at whether there is evidence that classified information was improperly stored or transmitted on that personal system in violation of a federal statute that makes it a felony to mishandle classified information, either intentionally or in a grossly negligent way, or a second statute making it a misdemeanor to knowingly remove classified information from appropriate systems or storage facilities.
It does not require intent. It just requires gross negligence. He said during his long statement that she was extremely careless.
Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. For example, 7 email chains concern matters that were classified at the top secret special access program at the time they were sent and received. Those chains involve Secretary Clinton both sending emails about those matters and receiving emails about those same matters. There is evidence to support a conclusion that any reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position or in the position of those with whom she was corresponding about those matters should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation. In addition to this highly sensitive information, we also found information that was properly classified as secret by the U.S. intelligence community at the time it was discussed on email. That is, excluding any later up-classified emails. None of these emails should have been on any kind of unclassified system, but their presence is especially concerning because all of these emails were housed on unclassified personal servers, not even supported by full-time security staff like those found at agencies and departments of the United States government, or even with a commercial email service like Gmail. I think it's also important to say something about the marking of classified information. Only a very small number of the emails here containing classified information bore markings that indicated the presence of classified information. But even if information is not marked classified in an email, participants who know or should know that the subject matter is classified are still obligated to protect it. And while not the focus of our investigation, we also developed evidence that the security culture of the State Department, in general, and with respect to the use of unclassified systems in particular, was generally lacking in the kind of care for classified information that's found elsewhere in the U.S. government. With respect to potential computer intrusion by hostile actors, we did not find direct evidence that Secretary Clinton's personal email domain, in its various configurations since 2009, was hacked successfully. But given the nature of the system and of the actors potentially involved, we assess we would be unlikely to see such direct evidence. We do assess that hostile actors gained access to the private commercial email accounts of people with whom Secretary Clinton was in regular contact from her personal account. We also assess that Secretary Clinton's use of a personal email domain was both known by a large number of people and readily apparent. She also used her personal email extensively while outside the United States, including sending and receiving work-related emails in the territory of sophisticated adversaries. Given that combination of factors, we assess it is possible that hostile actors gained access to Secretary Clinton's personal email account. Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
The first definition of gross negligence that comes up if you take out the legal dictionary is being extremely careless.
Yeah, and that's the problem. People at home want to know, what is this distinction? Is it a distinction without a difference? Because a lot of people hear this. I mean, we're both former prosecutors.
Sure.
Why wouldn't it go forward?
Well, the minute you say someone is extremely careless, you are saying they're grossly negligent. That is what a judge will charge a jury. The judge will charge a jury, has the government proven that she was extremely careless? What do we mean by gross negligence? We mean extremely careless. Regular negligence is not using the proper degree of care under the circumstances.
Sure.
Gross negligence is being extremely careless in exercising your responsibilities. That's what Jim Comey found. He then just didn't come to the conclusion that it's a violation of the statute. He came to the other conclusion. I think that's why he walked out. There's no way to square the two things.
Isn't that interesting? Because he was potentially going to take questions.
Well,
People were waiting, and he left.
That's the first question that would have been asked. Second question would have been, would she pass an FBI background check for top security clearance?
Right.
The answer is no.
No.
She couldn't possibly. I've read 1,000 FBI background checks, maybe 2,000. This would get thrown right in the ash can. I mean, she wouldn't be, the number 35 person at the State Department. We wouldn't hire her as an assistant U.S. attorney with this record.
Yes, she would fail the background check based on the standards that have been used for years and years.
Based on what he said. If you took his report and made it an FBI background check, she couldn't get any kind of sensitive job with the government of the United States. And finally, and you know this, we never prove intent with direct evidence. Very rarely does somebody say, I'm going to trade on inside information, or I'm going to pay this bribe. We do it with circumstantial evidence. Well, the circumstantial evidence here was overwhelming. He laid it all out. I thought he was going to come to the conclusion that she was going to be indicted. And here's the biggest piece of circumstantial evidence: the destruction of the 34,000 emails. He would have been entitled, under these facts, to a charge to the jury that from the destruction of the emails you can infer guilty knowledge.
Like consciousness of guilt.
Consciousness of guilt.
And that's
like
a powerful instruction.
Like, the instruction on fleeing. If someone flees, you get a charge. That is evidence of guilty knowledge. If someone destroys records that are possibly relevant, and these records have to be possibly relevant, they actually found some of these records to be relevant, he would have gotten that charge to the jury. So Jim has kind of turned it around. A reasonable prosecutor would have brought this case, no doubt, and I don't know how he ever is going to be able to charge anybody in the CIA or the FBI that is extremely careless with top secret information if he isn't charging Hillary Clinton. I mean, this is the special exception for the Clintons.
Right, because the bar is so high now in terms of the requisite level of proof, is what you're suggesting, because he's saying no reasonable prosecutor would bring this forward. I found that language to be very specific, and was it absurd?
Language is absurd. Reasonable prosecutors would bring this, and certainly under 18 U.S.C. Section 793, that would be the conservative way to go. The more challenging way to go would be to take all of this evidence of what she was doing, her destruction of emails, and use it as evidence of guilty knowledge. I'm pretty sure that's the way I would do it. And I don't have any doubt I could win this case in front of a jury.
Well, there you go. And now with something else that was interesting to me when we're sitting here watching this and people watching at home, he talked about her attorneys and the counsel that in fact removed, deleted some of these emails. They weren't able to get access to them. And then they were not recoverable because they said they purged and cleaned their devices in a way that they are no longer able to get them.
Giving these documents to them, by the way, was a violation of 793.
Just that in and of itself.
That was a violation of 793. Look, I worked in the Justice Department for 15 years. For 4 or 5 of those years, I had a high security clearance. And I would approve FISA applications.
Sure.
For national security. I never left the Justice Department with them. I stayed until 4 in the morning, and I locked them in the safe. If I had done something like this, there is no doubt in my mind the next Justice Department or I would have been indicted. I'd have been indicted for it. It is so discouraging to someone who loves the Justice Department to see a decision like this.
You fought your whole life for justice.
I am so disappointed in this. And I brought cases against the Teamsters Union during the 1988 election when it did serious damage to the Republican Party. Gosh almighty, you just put that out of your mind. You put all that stuff out of your mind. She violated 18 U.S.C. Section 793. Now, the interesting thing is the statute of limitations will not have run on this. And if Trump should win and appoint an attorney general who's got the courage to do it,
Sure.
They could bring this indictment.
That's a significant point that nobody's made today. That's why the world's been waiting to hear from you, for sure, on this. And a lot of people upset, obviously, because they said, look at the different standard applying, because David Petraeus, the trouble that he got into.
She should at least resign as a candidate on the grounds that if she can't pass a top security clearance, she can't be president of the United States.
Right. And now the American people will decide. Always a pleasure to have you, Rudy. Thank you so much for coming on The Real Story. And as we were saying, Director Comey said Clinton and her team were careless in their handling of classified material. Let's take a listen.
Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
Jay Sekulow is chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice and joins us now. You just heard Rudy Giuliani weighing in on his analysis of what has transpired here. What is your take?
Well, I did the same thing that Rudy Giuliani did. I looked up the words extremely careless in the legal dictionaries and looked at the case law, and it became clear. Extremely careless is gross negligence. Gross negligence under the statute is a felony. So Jim Comey laid out, and I have a lot of respect for Jim, but I'll tell you something, the fix was in on this from the beginning. We saw the beginning of it last week when Bill Clinton entered Loretta Lynch's airplane. I have no idea what took place in there. Maybe it was get your wife in to get the testimony done. We're wrapping this thing up, because gross negligence is extreme carelessness. That is just fact. So the reality is, Jim Comey said there was a crime here. He just decided not to prosecute it. But he was clear, Kim. He said there was, in fact, without any doubt, gross negligence. His wording, extreme carelessness. That is gross negligence under the law. That's a violation. That's a crime. This, frankly, is absurd, and the American people have had one pulled on them.